We're live.
Live. It's Senate Appropriations, April 17th. We're back on FY26 budget, and we're going to hear a kind of proposal construct around the child care funds, different from what the governor and House did. And so I don't know if you, Senator Bruce, want to start us off?
Sure. Emily, do you have the language? Yeah, that'd be great. If that's all right, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Emily is acceptable at the end of the table.
Well, she is.
Hey, I just want you to know in judiciary, we had a discussion of clerking, and you came up as an example.
Of the perfect clerk.
Well, I didn't put it that way.
I got reelected clerk enough times, so.
So, I'll just start this before Emily goes into details. And it involves, this is the move in the BAA and the budget to, as I view it, sort of borrow from or chip away at the general fund appropriation for childcare. And I think that's a dangerous thing to allow or to have that become a practice, because as most of the committee knows from other funds, sometimes there are transfers in funds that wind up being not fully made, and that becomes institutionalized, and then you're, to my mind, running contrary to the intent when it was passed. So what you'll see in general here is that instead of the move to reduce the general fund, the 76 million or so that is dedicated in the general fund to this, it leaves that in place and clarifies that that's not being used. And instead we go to the special fund, the child care contribution special fund for the 19 million. And to my mind, what that does is we go into the conference committee with the other body saying it is important to us that the general fund contribution be regarded as solid, not up for revision every year, and that if there are monies that are going to be taken, they can be from a momentary overage in the special fund. You'll see also in the second instance of amendment, there's the creation of a $5 million reserve in the special fund, so that if there's an extraordinary uptake or other eventuality, there's money in reserve there. That gets rid of the need to do what the House did and the administration did, which was caseload reserve fund being activated. And again, it's just designed to strengthen what we're doing with childcare. It also increases the rate for infants and toddlers, and it increases the capacity that we have in that area, which is currently lagging in a unsettling way. So I'll leave it to Emily to explain it, but all three of these things in my mind interlock to protect going forward the money from the payroll tax and the general fund that we have already intended to go to childcare, and it ups the contribution for infants and toddlers a little bit from what the House did.
Great. So real quick with the language, and I apologize, I flipped them from when I gave them to you. So the first page is actually the creation of the $5 million reserve. So this basically says in fiscal year 26, $5 million is reserved in the child care special fund to be utilized if there's, increased caseload or the revenue doesn't flow. There would be money there. And if it gets used, it requires the Commissioner of Finance Management to report back on it being used. And page 2 is where we have the transfer of $19 million so first they have to satisfy the reserve requirements, and then after that, $19 million would be transferred out of the child care special fund and into the general fund, in lieu of reducing the general fund appropriation to CDD for CCFAP. And then this last page is just just updating the statute to make sure it's Child Care Financial Assistance Program, which is the name of the actual program. But I have a little spreadsheet that walks through this because it's tricky to just understand it through words, I think, especially if your brain thinks in
Is this
spreadsheets.
the same as yesterday's?
So you'll see on the sort of first line, the shift the funds to the special funds. So this would be, the governor proposed shift the CCFAP funds from the general fund to the special fund, therefore reducing the amount of general fund that was needed. So, and the House agreed with that proposal. So in the Senate version, what we'll see, there won't be a $19 million reduction in the general fund in CDD. The caseload savings sort of is maintained in all three versions of the budget. That's the consensus with Joint Fiscal Office in terms of projected need in the program. The next row is the increase the infant and toddler rates. The House increased it to 4.5% over where it is. This proposal is to increase it to 5.5% of current rates. In addition, there's two proposed one-time investments that will be part of the conversation we have later in terms of budgetary investments. So the first one is additional funding for the Office of Professional Regulation for staff and IT to do licensing work, I believe, and then about $960,000 for fee waivers for initial or transitional licenses for childcare providers. So what that does, by eliminating that 19 million and then infants and toddler rates, et cetera, the total general fund impact, if you will, so the governor, by taking the 19 million and the 3.5 million in caseload savings, sort of had a reduction in the general fund of 22 million. The House, by adding in the infant and toddler rates, the reduction to the general fund was 17.6. And in the Senate, by eliminating that shift to the general fund and then making the additional investments, actually has a positive $3.6 million general fund impact. And then what we do to kind of try to bring it back into balance and rectify that difference is transfer the funds from the special fund to the general fund. So that's a source to the general fund, which in balance means that the Senate is assuming sort of it's a net $19 million reduction as opposed to the governor and the House's position.
So
I said $15 million.
if I could ask, so on the balance sheet,
Mhm.
the only impact of this that is monetary as a change is a $2.27 million addition.
Correct.
Yeah.
Compared to the House position.
So even though there are sources shifting around and other things, the net change between the House and the Senate is less than 2.5 million.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I think I need one more time just how the 5 million fits into this.
Sure. So you may recall in the FY25 budget, we transferred $8 million from the general fund into the child care special fund as part of the contingent appropriations. And that was sort of in recognition of there was a similar thing that happened where there was a swap in the special fund. There was savings in the program, anticipated savings, to sort of maintain the base. The General Assembly decided to put $8 million into the special fund. That $8 million is in the special fund. You know, it's such a new program and the revenue is new, so we don't really know what's going to happen in fiscal 25. So $5 million, it's anticipated that there'll be at least $5 million in the fund on a budgetary basis at the end of FY26. So this sort of says, you know, given that we don't know what's actually going to happen and we'll know more at the end of June in terms of how 25 performs, you know, assume that there's $5 million in the special fund when we're done in 25 or 26.
And as far as where it shows up on your spreadsheet, it's kind of within the 19 million that we're not moving, which is within that.
And it wouldn't show up on the spreadsheet because it's actually sort of reflective of money that was moved last year.
And not accounted for in the government record.
Yes, it wasn't spent in the government.
Yeah.
Like we're holding it.
Just keep it
It's
there.
there,
Yeah.
we're reserving it, don't touch it.
Yeah, and again, it's the same impulse that was already in the House proposal, which they had a mechanism if it was necessary for extra funds, but this strengthens the childcare piece of it rather than jury rigging something outside of childcare to take care of increased uptick.
And I should say, so in FY '25, the language says they can utilize the caseload reserve. It's sort of explicit in FY '25. That's in the
Yeah.
budget adjustment section. So that would be in like section F something of the big bill. In '26, this says like this $5 million this year. Now, I don't believe that this would preclude the Agency of Human Services utilizing the caseload reserve if there was a scenario that like all of a sudden there was an influx of babies and, you know, whatever.
We should be.
Or whatever, and they needed, you know, they needed to use more than that. They could potentially use that as a backstop. They don't need explicit language to do that, but it is in the budget adjustment. Or the, whatever it is.
There were two other items that were on the list from the childcare community that was of interest to them. One is in the investment in early childhood educators, and the other was the investment in child care quality and capacity, and dealt with the food programs. One was 156,000, and the other was 182,000. And I would think within this area that it might fit within what the intent of this is.
And I would take that as a friendly amendment if the committee is of a mind to add those to this.
Okay. Is that the CTV or the Career Technical Centers?
Yep, it is the Career Technical Centers. And this would be added on to their base. They have had way more students apply for their apprenticeship programs with the Technical Center than I think there are about 75 applicants over what there is, what they have money for placement. And
What did they estimate the cost?
what's that?
What did they estimate the cost of that?
156,000.
Okay.
And it's one of the best feeders.
Okay.
And it was an initiative of this committee back a few years ago.
So to clarify, Rich, you're talking about adding that piece to the base.
Well, I wanted to raise it if you're gonna.
Yeah.
It really is, if you're going to move towards the future, particularly in my point of view, the early childhood educator pieces, you've got to get people in to do this work. And this is a direct feeder to make sure that you've got people. When you come out of the Technical Center program, you at least have a license where if you go to work for a center, somebody else can leave the room, because this is one of the best feeders we've got. So I would suggest it be incorporated within this overall proposal.
So Emily, if I could ask, under short-term transition needs, those are one time, the two below it?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
So if we added those as one times,
Yep.
we would have 4 lines of one time, and 2.27 would become something like 2.6.
We can either add them onto here, or when we walk through the
Yeah.
rest of the
Yep.
budget, we can add them.
And I'm fine either way. I just would ask direction of the committee, which they think is best.
That can be part of the overall construct, which I thought we'd do that at 3, but we have time, so if you're ready to do it now, and we could just do it now.
If you want to. If you want to start that conversation.
Yeah, so we can,
Elle, do you have copies yet? Perfect, yes.
we could start it now, and then maybe we'll break to listen to Department Health. Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
You want?
Emily, do you want a
I got
hard copy?
We got it.
Do you want me to share it or?
Yeah, I'll share it too. So just for the committee's background on this, so this is built off of the April 14th spreadsheet, I call it. So Emily gave us a lot of those big sheets with the whole budget. The one on the 14th had $65 million in red. That was when we just added everything in. We took the higher amount from the governor of the house on anything, and then we added that some things. Some other things were added, but so I tried to get from $65 million down to a balanced budget. I got down to close to that, but I still, this isn't still balanced, nor would I say I completed everything. Like I have still some negotiations to do with institutions on the capital bill. Still hearing from other committees and senators on other priorities. So this is just gives us a starting point, trying to get us from 65 million down to 7.1 million deficit. So we would still, to become in balance, we'd either need to come up with $7 million of revenue or $7 million of cuts. So we'll go through the base changes. Do you want to say anything general about it, Emily?
It's not perfect. There are some places where you'll see like move to the base and then it actually shows up on the base sheet. And in some places you'll see move to the base, but it hasn't actually moved yet. And I think for like, until there's sort of a like, all right, do some stuff and we'll go update. This, I think, yes, if we start with the base changes, which should be
So the gold.
the golden one and the landscape one,
Yeah.
which I don't have, my copy doesn't do it, but I printed it so that you would know which direction it is, go to the landscape side, the yellow on top.
Yeah, so these, so the top part is reductions that I'm
Yes,
proposing we move out. So I took out $8.74 million here. And this sheet actually goes from April 11th. But I think that's the same as the April 14th sheet. I don't think there's any difference.
I don't think so, whatever we used on Friday.
Yeah.
Which I could have my dates on.
But that's based, the first column is when we were $65 million
Yes, 61 million.
down, $61 million.
Is the one I went off.
Okay, I'm a little confused.
Go to the other side,
Yeah,
yellow side.
the yellow side or the gold side, they proposed base changes, and this is proposed reductions.
Okay, and on this side, what are those?
Those are one,
That's one side.
also proposals of reductions and additions.
Okay, so we're starting gold.
We're starting with the gold.
Right, so the column, the sort of April 11th, which is where we were when there was the $65 million hole. So that was what those numbers were on the big spreadsheet on that date. The proposed change is what they would get updated to, and then the difference is sort of what's either reduced or added from there.
So am I right, because it's proposed reductions, that the numbers are subtractions from the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll notice the middle column numbers are all lower than the left.
Right, I'm just wondering, then the difference has the parentheses that we usually use for reduction.
Yes, so I would think of it as, so for we'll just do the first one, additional county expansion of court diversion. There was 1.7 million in that
Yeah.
line. This is proposing to take it down to 1.1, which would reduce it by 0.6.
Okay, yeah, it's just a different notation system
Yeah.
than we usually use.
And yeah, the pluses and minuses are complicated when you're doing reductions with
Right,
negatives
right,
and
right.
all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it,
But it reduces
We'll probably-
Yeah,
the budget by $8.74 million.
Yeah.
So if something's moving over to one time, then it will show up in the green when we flip it.
It should,
it should.
Okay.
but that's kind of what Emily's saying.
I
Sometimes, so
saw
we're doing
something
this
that
pretty
wasn't, that's why I
quick
asked the
between
question.
yesterday and today.
Okay,
you might not see
Yeah,
that.
got it.
Yeah, and if there, I can hopefully explain those
Yeah.
if there are.
And you can, I don't need to go through them each one at a time, so, but if you have any, look through those, if you have any questions about what any of them are,
I can cross-reference them. It would have been helpful if you just highlighted and said this might have moved to one time.
I know. I can
Yeah,
flag them.
well, yeah, oh, let me highlight the ones, I think that there's not very many of those.
There aren't many, VHIP is moved over.
VHIP, the emergency food, I think those are the only two.
Yeah.
I believe so, yes, emergency, on this side, yeah, emergency food moves over to one time.
And VHIP, so those are reductions here, but you'll see in those two items, you'll see on the one side.
As increases, I hope. I did it right.
So the two, what,
The PPS $500,000 emergency food,
yep,
B211, and then B802, the VHIP. 4.5 or 4.3 million.
okay. You did put that as one time.
Yeah, you'll see it on the one time.
Actually, emergency food is not over here, so add emergency food, but
Emergency
VHIP is.
food isn't over there, so it should be.
No.
I don't see it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, these are, I see, base.
Yeah.
Base.
So these are things that come out of the base. So I'll add in emergency food in the next version, which I can maybe get another one
Okay.
while the health department testifies.
Yeah.
The VHIP is over.
Comments now, later, look at it.
If you have questions now, but we can
Okay.
maybe post some comments.
I have can we do, the green side too?
Nope,
Oh, wait.
not right now, we're getting there.
Can I talk through the bottom part?
Yes,
What's going on the bottom? So if you look at the sheet from the end of last week, the base sheet, there was $37.17 million on the bottom of that sheet that was available for one-time investment. So if we take that 37.17, we take out the net changes in revenue and spending, right? So this has, we're gonna this saves, in quotes, $8 million and then spends another $23 million. So the net of that is actually an increase in spending of $14 million. A lot of that has to do with the childcare swap, and that's dealt with on the next page. But so the $14 million sort of uses part of that balance. Then we have additional revenue coming in. So remember, when I was here earlier in the week and we talked about that there was $3 million in the cannabis fund, but I said sometimes you find a pile of money and then you fall in a hole. There's also, we're working on getting a final number from unclaimed property, but it looks like that number, maybe the unclaimed property transfer is gonna be reduced by about $3 million. So that sort of wipes out the cannabis money. But it looks like we may have a little bit of extra money coming from the Department of Financial Regulation. So that's another $1.5 million. So the net of those is an extra $1.5 million, approximately. Oh wait, I'm not supposed to.
Can I, on 318 childcare apprenticeship program, if that was moved in the conversation we had before, would that be moved to the 19?
So this would be an additional,
It's over the 19.
it's over the 19, this 1.6. No, 0.16.
But I made a suggestion before that we might move it into the 19.
Because the 19, we're not doing with we're not moving the 19. So we're spent, because 19 is,
And I
since
missed,
we're not moving it, we would be spending the general fund.
okay,
But it would, so you could put it on this sheet.
that's what I was suggesting.
But the end, it doesn't matter what sheet.
Yeah.
All the stuff on this sheet will end up on this sheet.
And everything on that sheet should be on this sheet.
So any questions about those base changes?
Oh yeah. the one thing I was gonna say, so what that means is that you have, there's a change in what's available for one-time spending. Of 24, it goes from 37 down to 24 is available for one time with these changes.
So now you have permission to go to the green light.
If I may.
Yes, in a brief.
So, you remember when we were talking about PCB remediation, I was expressing surprise that the House had changed their position to, because their position has for years been, we need dramatically more money for remediation than we have made available. And yet the House cut the governor's recommendation in half. That didn't make sense to me, but yesterday or the day before, Chair Conlon of the Ed Committee sent an email, I don't know if everybody got it or not, basically saying, don't cut the governor's recommend, we desperately need that money. So I can only surmise that Ed maybe recommended going with the governor's number and House approach cut it in half anyway. But I see here it's cut in half again.
This is the testing, and it's a question about the testing. This is not the 9 million. So the 9 million didn't change from the other spreadsheet. So we had 9 million, or 9.1.
Yeah.
9.54, yeah.
9.54. Since I'm not changing the 9.54, you won't see it on the sheet. So this is all the spending, but the testing, because the other, I need to talk with A&R about, if you look at the description of the 9 point whatever, it includes testing. And then there's also this testing.
Yeah.
And there's a question about how much they need for the fiscal year. And if this testing is gonna come from both, and are there two different entities doing testing? Is A&R doing testing and DEH doing testing?
So I guess my question is,
24 is the House position, by the way, for the VDH testing, 240,000.
in a way, I don't think we can separate them, because once you test a school, if it's found to go over the limits, the acceptable limits, you have to remediate. And so is our position, because we don't have the rest of the sheet, is our position that we support, because the House cut both testing and remediation by half. And so would our position then be that we're following the House in cutting remediation by half, but for testing, we're cutting it
No,
again?
we're going with the governor's proposal on remediation, the full 9 point.
But cutting the money for testing.
This VDH testing, which I need to clarify, is different than the A&R.
Yeah,
It's different in A&R.
And on a fiscal year, was this like the testing that they needed to get through multiple years, or?
so I can fully support as I'm worried about the remediation money.
Yeah, that's
So as long as we're going with the governor's recommend,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter so much to me if we've,
Yeah, so I just need to clarify that 240,000.
The position of the House has been before to zero out the testing, so
Yeah.
we didn't know where anything was.
Right.
They,
Or-
this time cut the testing in half, which means you'll slow down the pipeline in the years to come about what we know about.
Well, just to be clear, they're doing no testing on new schools.
Uh-huh.
On new schools, so no new schools are being tested. And
they're
that's
just retesting to find out if remediation worked. So that's why I'm okay with this being lowered to 0.24. I mean, we may get in an argument in conference about it.
Are we done all the schools once?
No, I don't think so.
So the pause was an administrative decision.
Yeah.
By the Department of Environmental Conservation.
We were silent on it in the budget, and so that was based on the administration saying they were unilaterally going to slow down. But now I have the same information as the chair, which is that they've almost stopped it. And so what they need is money to retest and that sort of stuff. And then if they retest and there's still money there, they could begin testing again. But
And I don't know if you have any more.
No, I mean, I have the same information that you did. We did have Secretary Moore into Natural Resources this morning, and I asked specifically about the follow-up testing to say, is that follow-up testing included in the 9.5? And she said that it was. And because I had asked Amelia, there's this other line item
Right.
about testing. No, it's in the, so I don't
It's in the
know.
remediation line, she said?
Right, that's what she said. So I don't know what, this line,
VDH.
I don't know what the VDH, I don't know how it's different.
I don't know
That'd
if
be
it's like
good
there's
to-
a cost, it's the same test, but both departments have a cost, like one's for the lab and one is for the collecting.
That would be good to know, like, do they depend on each other?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the emergency food will just be added to this column that we moved to one time from base, so that's the only addition right now that we find. But you can look through the list. You should be familiar with, they're not, there might be a new one on here, but I think they're all things that you have seen before. If you have any questions, you can ask about it. So these are all reductions to try to get the budget to be in balance. And then down below is the additional spending, things that we've talked about. And there might, like as I said, this still means this gets us within $7 million.
It's gonna be 7.6.
7.6. So yeah, because of that $500,000 for the food thing. So I'm gonna say that we're not gonna talk about it anymore because Department of Health is here to give us the good news about.
So can I just ask one?
Yeah,
So the tuition advantage program, is that, there's one CCV and then there's one, the Vermont State Colleges.
Freedom and Unity is
The Freedom and Unity
that's listed down here.
is, and where is that?
That's midway down.
BSAC right in the middle,
there's two PSACs.
two pieces.
There's two,
So both of them are
Second
cut
one.
in half. Both of the,
where's that?
They were both, which I think was, yeah. All right, so we'll have some more discussions about this after we hear from the health department. Emily, do you have anything else about the sheet? I guess the bottom math is clear. The additional revenues to 14.87. Do you want to say anything about that?
Sure,
Oh,
yes.
That's from the other side.
That's from, so part of it's from the other side, but there's the, what we talked about yesterday, the FY25 bottom line carry forward, right? So that assumes that the treasurer's office appropriation for debt bond redemption doesn't occur, so there's $4 million there, plus the conversation yesterday with revert the remaining bond redemption appropriations, so that's another $5 million. This is the sort of other transaction related to the child care special fund, so this is the $19 million coming in from that fund. And then the base funding for one-time appropriations, this is the change on the other side of the sheet, so that's less money from the base side of things. But that's an additional $14 million for one-time spending.
Just to give an example of another one that didn't get moved, an additional spending, the first one, Department of Public Safety, the urban search and rescue, $500,000 would be moved over to the base.
Yes, I didn't move that
The
yet.
gold side.
It's
But
one
the,
that's
but the
accounted.
ending number ends up the same for next
Yes.
fiscal year, same reduction, 7.6, no. Okay, thank you, Emily. So do we have
Yep.
PDH on Zoom?
And we already at concert. And here in person.
Oh, you're in person, okay, okay, great.
Taking more time.
Sorry, hold on, let me do
Yeah, as soon as that choice seat is freed up.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yes.
no, our favorite.
There's that.
everyone. Thanks for having me in.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is my first time with, are we good on the slides? Do I need to have them projected or? If you log into the Zoom.
Does she have the Zoom link?
Yes. Oh, I have the Zoom link. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And we can maybe get started with Kelly.
Sure.
Yeah, you could just introduce yourself for the record and
Oh, is Kelly gonna start or do you want me to start? Okay, I can introduce myself for the record. It's Maura Cook, and I am Division Director for Health Promotion Disease Prevention at the Vermont Department of Health. And so, and I have not testified in probably 20 some odd years, so you'll notice some nerves.
so we'll try to make you feel at home.
Thank you.
And Kelly? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Kelly Doherty, Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Health. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Okay, who wants to start?
I would love to start. I'm gonna hand my computer to you, and then you can bring it up and then hand it back to me, and I'll just get going. So, I'm Maura Cook, and as I said, and I've been in this role for this current job for about 2.5 years, but I started my career as a tobacco control specialist in 1999 at the health department. And so we had, and I was part of the crew that created the comprehensive tobacco control program that we still have today. And I'm going to show you a slide from the American Lung Association website. They give us a score every single year based on how we're doing in terms of our programming for tobacco control. And good. And at this point, we have an F in terms of our funding. We are currently funded at 3.7 million for tobacco control. The recommended minimum to get an A grade for a comprehensive tobacco control program in Vermont is $8.4 million. We get, this is where I'm nervous about not having my notes, but about $2.7 million in state resources. And that's a split between the Master Settlement Agreement, MSA funds, and Global Commitment. And then we get about $1.1 million from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Office of Smoking and Health. And this grade that I was referring to, this F score, is based on guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Way back when they, before the master settlement came down, the CDC released guidelines that really outlined the components of a comprehensive tobacco control plan, how much money you should spend in each, and and the total amount. And so when I was a tobacco control specialist, I worked with the community grantees. And then a few years later, I was promoted to the manager role, and I oversaw a $7.2 million budget 20 some odd years ago. And we had an A score. That was when, that was the minimum. That was what we needed to really drive the needle and reduce tobacco use in this state. 2 weeks ago, you may have heard that the CDC is taking a big hit. 2 weeks ago, the Office of Smoking and Health at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention was eliminated. That was an office that was set up shortly after the Surgeon General's report in the 60s. All their staff have been fired. We are slated to start year 6 of our current CDC grant on April 29th. Supposedly before the staff were hired, that funding was approved to move forward. We've heard nothing. And we are hearing about significant cuts to the CDC, HHS. We don't know what those mean yet. So we are now looking at $1.1 million less, a real possibility of $1.1 million less in our tobacco control budget. We're continuing to work until we get an official notification one way or another. I'm here to talk about tobacco funding, but I just want to also tell you that this is true for within just our little division of health promotion disease prevention. It is true for asthma, arthritis, Alzheimer's, and other dementias. We haven't heard anything about COPD, but we assume those staff have been hired and the office has been eliminated. We weren't currently getting funded for oral health, but that office was eliminated. It's pretty unnerving right now. So that's the current status of the funding. Are you good? Oh, great. Thank you so much. Good job. Okay, so I'm still on slide number 2 in my packet. You can see it up there. Thank you. And to be very direct, an additional $500,000 out of our budget will be a double whammy. And that is no disrespect to the PCC network. Between my time as a tobacco control specialist and my current gig, I was the district director of the Middlebury Health Department office, so I worked really closely with Madison County and Child Center. I have seen how they have transformed the lives of young families in the state, and yet our program has saved lives. There are so many fewer smokers in the state because of our comprehensive tobacco control program. And I can say with a certain level of certainty that the grandparents of the kiddos who are currently being served by PCC, at least some of them utilized our services and are here and are healthy today because of our comprehensive tobacco control program. Sorry, I got a little emotional about that. Okay, so here's where we're doing really well. And I just want to say we have a hardworking, scrappy, really smart crew at the Tobacco Control Program at the Vermont Department of Health. We've got great grantees and contractors, great community partners. We're getting an A from the Lung Association for our cessation services. And that's because we're funding it well. We're putting the resources in here. We have some of the best, we have the best, not some of, the best utilization of our cessation service of any quit line in the country. The average quit rate is 34%. Ours is 39%. We are doing something a little innovative and providing direct, not big, cash incentives to certain populations to really increase engagement in our quit line. Those populations, let's see if I can do it, pregnant, postpartum, people who have Medicaid, uninsured Vermonters, Vermonters with mental health diagnoses and substance use disorder, and our Native American Abenaki communities. They all have special incentives that in order to be able to really increase engagement, and that is driving our quit rates and our participation in our quit line.
And I don't want you to go through all these.
I'm not going to.
So, good.
I don't have time.
So, yeah, like, you could basically go all the way to slide 12 unless there's something in particular, but because the question that we're asking is specifically around cessation of pregnant Vermont.
Okay, let's hop down.
And the dollar amount that you're spending on that now, and what would be the impact specifically on all the cessation work that you do if that 500,000 was, like, what would you cut specifically of that 5? Or you don't know. If you don't have an answer, that's fine.
Well, we're certainly looking at what we might have to cut because of the 1.1 million that is looming over our heads. And so what will get cut, we just won't provide the premium service in terms of our quit line. We won't be able to provide as much youth programming. We won't be able to provide as much school, community programming. We're looking at significant cuts. In terms of the dollar amount that we spend directly on cessation among pregnant women, I don't have that number, but we can work on that. Here's the thing, there are a lot of people who rely on our program to be whole. A lot of community partners that rely on we have a comprehensive program that has been effective for a quarter of a century. The PCCs already work with us in terms of partnering with our community coalitions in the communities they serve. They help promote the quit line and the incentives. They help get pregnant women into those incentive programs. Their teen participants have participated in our Voices Exposed programming. And it's not just the PCCs who rely on our services. We work directly with schools. The doctors, the dentists, the pharmacists, the social workers, who all refer to the quit line. They need this all to be here. 70% of Vermont smokers want to quit. Faced with the cuts that we have to make, potentially with this 100,000 and then this other 500,000, we're not going to be able to provide the premium service that we've been able to provide for the last 25 years. And it's not fair to the people who are still smoking and want to quit and haven't quite made that call.
Well, yeah, we're hoping to focus it on the pregnant Vermonters. Not that we would take it away and spend it on something that's not sensation, but that we would move it over. So that's the proposal. And then the other part, which you were planning to talk about, is the amount of money in the tobacco funds for FY26. Could you do both for your full funding and the 500,000 for the parent-child centers next year, even though that might cause a shortfall FY27?
We would love to do this with the PCCs. It just can't come at the expense of our program. We have been level funded and actually shrinking for years. And that's really the bottom line, and not that this population is a priority, and we have done good work. We have more work to do here. As you can see, we're still above the national level. I remember a time when we were well above 16%, but we need to do more here, and we would love to work with them, but we can't do it at the expense of this program because there isn't space in this budget. And here are some of the campaigns we've done. This is a campaign that we worked with across a few different divisions in our department, to really address and hammer away at smoking rates during pregnancy.
I guess the concern is specifically around pregnancy, is that we might be reducing that. We're still above the national average and above other states. I had seen this data is from 2021, which I think does match up with your chart, that we're at 2021 around 9%. But it's around 9% to 2021. That's several points higher than Louisiana's only 4%. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, all these other states have lower pregnancy smoking rates. New Hampshire, 6%. So I think the question was, is what we're doing working for the pregnant population, or is there something different about Vermont, or? That, I think that's where some of this came from, is that since the statistics,
Sure.
even though we're making progress, why are we like one of the highest?
Why are we higher?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, remember, we're dealing in small numbers in
Right.
this state.
so few people can make a difference.
Yeah, and, and we have a declining birth rate, what was it? It was a shockingly low number, and that I don't feel comfortable quoting. So and this was a blip, I'm not saying it was a trend, but forever in Addison County, when I was WIC director of the Middlebury office and running the WIC program, there were about 300 to 350 births in Addison County. It was Donna Bailey, the head of the Parent-Child Center in Addison County, who recently told me that last year they had 150 births. So, and I didn't, because I don't work there, I didn't check the number but I believe her. And so we were seeing a staggeringly low birth rate. And the folks that tend to smoke or use tobacco products are lower income, and that's just our population. And so in Addison County, we have a pretty low smoking rate among pregnant people because we're a more affluent community. It's higher in other parts of the state.
Right. I think your argument about population probably seems to hold for other low population states, Wyoming, Maine. So I think it seems to track more with maybe that than income, because states that have a much lower medium income have half the rate than Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you could talk about the tobacco fund itself and how that works in there.
We really focus on the MSA dollars that come into the department. I believe that's finance. Well, I'm looking at my friend here, found a friend here.
Yeah, I think that's finance, I can get back to you,
Okay, because I think that's what people also looked at the tobacco fund and saw that there was money there and said, well, why couldn't we use some of that money, not cut your program, but use some of that money for, the additional cessation work.
On my first slide, it looks like there's, it gives the total amount of tobacco-related revenue that the state brings in, and it's about 94 million, but that's all the information I have.
Right. So I did see a sheet at one point that did try to break it down, but it looked like in the outer years there would be a deficit, but that next year there would be without cutting your program. But that's some of the information we're hoping to figure out. It's like, would you really have to cut your program, assuming you get the federal funds, if we move this $500,000, or does that just cause the deficit in 27 or 28? And does it make it and then is there going to be a deficit anyway in 27 or 28, and this just makes it worse, or does it? So that's
what I can say is we don't have a large team. We have a small team on our staff. And actually that was by design way back then. And we've not gotten any additional funding. Our CDC grant has remained flat. In fact, we've seen reductions in our funding over the last 8 years. Our costs are going up and our funding is flat. So we effectively get a cut every year.
Yeah. Okay, hear that. Okay, well, we'll try to get some more information specifically on the tobacco fund.
Yeah.
And just kind of what it would mean in the next fiscal year, because we're not looking to cut your program so much as to augment it with something additional. I don't know if Kelly was going to talk about other substance use prevention funds. I don't know if you would. I don't know, Kelly, if you had slides or.
I do, yep.
Maybe you'd have to get out of your slides.
Okay, thank you.
technical assistance.
And if Kelly has to do.
Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize, I can't be there in person. Have meetings on either side of this. So what I'm here today to talk about is, I want to give a very brief overview of and for the record, Kelly Doherty, Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Health. I want to talk about, give a brief overview of the SUD system of care that the health department works with, and I'm about to pull up my slides here. And are you seeing that yet?
No.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Let me put it in. Whoop, that's not it. Sorry. Hold on.
That looks too complicated.
I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here.
Okay.
Here we go. That should be better. You see those slides? Let me... Are you seeing those?
Yeah.
Wow. Is this the one we are supposed to be seeing?
I don't know.
Are you seeing a substance use program system of care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So I just wanted to give a brief overview just to set some context about what we here at the health department do with respect to substance use programming. And this graphic is designed to sort of have the most broad interventions that reach the most people at the bottom and sort of go up to the most intensive services. So at the top, you can see that we provide residential treatment for folks with substance use disorders. Actually, we're now down to 4 facilities in Vermont. So we have what we call high intensity residential treatment, which is for people who need sort of 24/7 medical monitoring. And then we have a lower level of residential treatment where folks don't need sort of that intensive medical monitoring, but may need sort of still a residential facility where they can work on their recovery skills, engage in programming and things like that. You're probably familiar with our hub and spoke system, which is for treatment of opioid use disorder. Folks can also receive other treatment for other substance use disorders at the hubs and spokes, as well as some physical health care and mental health services. We have outpatient services and intensive outpatient services. We work with, we have our public inebriate programs and syringe service programs for sort of intervention and harm reduction. And I want to focus on this recovery line for a minute because I understand there's a little bit of confusion around recovery housing, recovery centers, and this intensive recovery housing pilot that we had proposed in the governor's budget. So recovery centers are independent nonprofit organizations in the community. There are 12 of them in Vermont, and they are just what they sound like. They're drop-in centers where you can attend support groups, you can attend AA meetings, you can, connect with other people in recovery, and find support there. They provide a variety of services. They're not 24/7. They're just sort of community centers for folks in recovery. Recovery housing is actually sober living environments. So they are houses that folks can live in substance-free, where there is peer support with with your roommates, and also maybe a house manager, something like that. So oftentimes people can maybe they're in residential treatment, they can leave, move into a recovery residence or recovery housing and stay there for 6 months, a year, till they feel stable enough in their recovery to live sort of in another type of, independent arrangement. I'm going to talk about the intensive recovery pilot on the next slide, so I'll skip that for now. But the other really important component of recovery support that we fund in Vermont are recovery coaches in the emergency department. So these folks are employed by the recovery centers in the community, and what they will do is respond to the emergency department either when someone presents because of an overdose, or if they're in the emergency department for another reason and, it's disclosed that they have a substance use disorder, recovery coaches can engage with them in that moment and help connect them to services in the community. And that's been a really successful program. And then finally, at the bottom, we do a lot of work around prevention and early intervention. We do messaging campaigns. We do a lot of training. We have staff deployed across the state called prevention consultants in all of our district offices. We fund community-based prevention coalitions who do a lot of work with youth and others in the community to help prevent substance use initiation. And we also fund school-based health programs to address substance use prevention. And then I will finally just call out VT HelpLink, which is now just over 5 years old, and it is a call center and website that can direct people to substance use resources, and they are operating 24/7, 365. So folks can access those resources when they are ready to. So I'm going to focus on the funding that was requested in the governor's recommended budget that would have a serious impact on the state's ability to fill identified gaps in the substance use disorder continuum of care, but did not make it into the House's budget. And the first one, as I mentioned previously, is this intensive recovery housing pilot. So how this is different from the recovery housing that already exists in the state is that this would be, so when you're in a basic recovery housing situation, other than the peer support that you receive in the house with your peers who are also in recovery, all the services that you're receiving, you leave the recovery housing and you get those services out in the community. So if you're going to support groups, you're going to outpatient treatment, all of those things. What we want to try with this intensive recovery housing pilot is to have 15 beds in a recovery housing environment. And we would serve substance use disorders, co-occurring mental health conditions, and also justice-involved individuals who are seeking more support during their recovery. The difference between this and regular recovery housing is that the services will come to them. So
So this is also the campus?
Yes. Yeah, that was referred to initially as a campus, but we changed the language to this intensive recovery housing. So we would bring in outpatient treatment and mental health screening and services, coordination of medication-assisted treatment, employment services through Dale's Higher Ability Program, bring in recovery services from the community so that groups and other activities could be done on site. Life skills training, because, sometimes, especially if folks are coming out of incarceration or if they have had other, life experiences where they don't really know how to pay the rent and, do those things that keep you stably housed, we would bring in life skills training so that people, when they're ready, can move into the community and be more stable so that they don't lose their housing. And we would provide transportation or coordinate transportation for other things that might be off-site that the person is engaging with. So it's a much more intensive and supportive environment. And so that's what makes this different from basic recovery housing. Let me just see. So we have already taken steps to gather input. We did a request for information a few months ago to sort of hear from communities, you know, what they thought was needed. So we have already sort of developed a plan, and these bullets on the slide are a reflection of what we heard. In the event, just in case this makes it back in the budget, which we hope it does, we have already issued an RFP. So it's out there now. So just in case we're able to move forward with this, we'll be one step ahead with respect to implementation. And the budget, as I'm sure you know, was we were requesting 500 general fund one time and 1.5 base. The other program that was a priority for us that didn't make it in was aftercare navigators. So these positions would address a critical gap in post-discharge from residential treatment. So what we are proposing is that in those 4 residential treatment settings, we would hire, or the residential treatment programs would hire aftercare navigators. And the reason why this is a gap is that currently when folks are leaving residential treatment, when they're being discharged, they do discharge with a care plan. So while they're in residential treatment, they work with their providers in the facility to determine what they'll be needing once they leave the facility, whether that's engaging with the hub and spoke system or intensive outpatient treatment or outpatient treatment. They develop a plan. The problem is that they don't get any support in actually operationalizing that plan, because once they're discharged from the residential treatment facility, the residential treatment providers don't really have anything more to do with them. So it really helps them. It would really help them if they had an individual who could basically, it's very aptly named, help them navigate the system, you know, make sure that they're, you know, engaging with their outpatient provider, connecting them to recovery supports in the community, and really helping them take that next step, because this is a critical point where people relapse.
We have a question for you.
Yes.
Senator Bruce.
Kelly, thank you. It's a very quick question.
Yes.
So I'm right in assuming that we don't currently have aftercare navigators.
We do not.
So this is an attempt to add that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so I think I've said everything that's on here. And then, so those were the 2 things I wanted to highlight most today, because I knew that our time was limited. But before I conclude, I'd like to add one more thing that's related to the conversion of the DOC facility into a treatment-focused facility. As you probably know, substance use disorders are extremely prevalent in the incarcerated population, and they're a priority population for us with respect to delivering high-quality intensive treatment services. You know, a more focused treatment environment in the carceral setting. So what we would appreciate is expedience in the ability to begin implementation of the facility conversion in accordance with the plan that was put forward. We would greatly appreciate that. If you have specific questions around sort of, you know, the conversion and all that stuff, I would refer you to my colleagues in DOC. But I just wanted to put that out there, that we would appreciate DOC's ability to expedite implementation, since this is such a critical population that we want to better serve.
And just a quick question on that last one. And maybe we have to ask DOC, but the House had reduced that by $100,000.
Right.
I don't know if that was based on new information of the costs. Or would I have to ask?
Yeah, I don't know what the rationale was for reducing funding.
Okay. And so also, will you send even just the 3 slides to
Absolutely.
our committee assistant so we can have those on our website?
Will do.
Any other questions? Because that was helpful to describe the different recovery efforts. I
It
appreciate
is
it.
confusing.
Yeah. It's about center lines of the question.
Yeah, no, quick question, because I continue to be concerned about the report that's coming in December of 15th, 2025, as a result of Act 163, S-186, that we passed last year. And we're looking for what we have available for residential facilities and licensed certified and non-certified recovery centers and services across the state. And I thought that we were going to look at that and then decide how to proceed with expansion, particularly with a larger campus concept, which this does reflect. So
Right. I think
we
it's
just talk about, because obviously you and I have met with the Fletcher Group, we've met with other folks who are very concerned about this. And so can you just talk a little bit about where that report is at this time?
yeah, so I'll just say that it's kind of a both and. I mean, we already know, I mean, obviously that report and that work doing the inventory is really important, but we know that there is a shortage of recovery housing. So in the meantime, we thought that we would pilot this so that we could see if that's something that we want to add once we see the full scope of the inventory. If it's a successful model, then we might want to look at expanding that way. And I'll have to check in with the staff at DSU and maybe with Jeff Moreau to see where that inventory report is, but it'll certainly be with you in December.
Okay, thank you. So can you compare the work that this would do with what currently is happening with Jenna's Promise or another similar pilot program?
Yeah, so Jenna's Promise is a little bit different than what we are proposing. So they, they have their recovery housing, but they do go off site to get their treatment services and other things. So this would be, it's similar because it is sort of a contained environment, but it's a little bit more intensive than that. And so I think it would be good to try this pilot and compare it with Jenna's Promise and then the other recovery, like the more basic recovery housing places that are in operation in Vermont.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I don't think we have any other questions. Unless you have
Okay.
any other information you want to share.
I don't think so, but I'll send those slides right along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
So we're going to take a break.